What challenges do Latin texts pose for scholasticism? Imagine trying to piece together a puzzle where some pieces are in a language no longer spoken. That's what medieval scholars faced with Latin texts. Latin was the main language used in learning, philosophy, and theology during the Middle Ages. But working with Latin texts brought many hurdles. First, Latin was the language of scholars, but many of the original ideas came from Greek sources like Aristotle. When translating Aristotle's Greek works into Latin, scholars had to invent new words and phrases. This was tricky because Greek concepts often had no direct Latin equivalent. Creating these terms was a slow process that sometimes made texts sound awkward or overly complicated. This made understanding and teaching these ideas more difficult. Another challenge was how Latin texts brought in ideas from outside Christian beliefs. Aristotle's philosophy, for example, focused on natural observation and empirical evidence. But Christian doctrine emphasized faith and divine revelation. Scholastics had to find ways to fit these foreign ideas into their religious worldview. This meant writing long commentaries and debates to reconcile differences. Sometimes they had to reinterpret Aristotle's ideas to make them compatible with Christian teachings. This process was complex and required careful thought. The sheer amount of Latin texts also posed a problem. Over time, many sources from ancient Greece, Rome, and Christian writers flooded into Europe. Scholastics needed to organize and understand all this material. They created methods to classify and comment on texts, but managing such a large body of knowledge was demanding. It required disciplined study and systematic approaches. This focus on methods sometimes made the writings dense and hard to read. It was more about logical structure than literary beauty or personal style. Access was another issue. Latin was a specialized language used mainly by the educated elite. Ordinary people or even many clergy members found Latin difficult to learn. Texts were read aloud in universities or monasteries, but only a few could fully understand them. This created a gap between scholars and the wider community. It meant that many ideas stayed within academic circles and did not spread easily to the general population. In summary, Latin texts created hurdles in language, ideas, organization, and accessibility. These challenges pushed scholars to develop new Latin vocabulary, rethink classical philosophy in Christian terms, and adopt systematic study methods. Working with Latin texts shaped scholasticism into a highly structured and technical tradition focused on precise reasoning. These difficulties made medieval philosophy rigorous and detailed, but also sometimes slow and complicated to navigate.